topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk. I'm your host, Wendy Stewart, and I'm trying out some new lighting tonight, and I'm looking like a poltergeist even to myself. Oh, well, listen, you don't know it till you try it, right? So I hope everybody is having a good week. Here we are in December. It's a month of parties, Yuletide cheer, and in some ways, as many of you know, it's the calm before the storm, and I will just leave it at that. So I'm so happy to have everyone here with me tonight. I have to tell you, we end up having the greatest guests on this show through word of mouth. And one of our board members, Janine, came to me and said she had been to Provincetown and saw an extraordinary film. And she actually talked to the producer of that film. And I said, you have to put me in touch with him. So I have an amazing guest here tonight. Okay. I'm calling tonight's segment, How Documentary Filmmaking Inspires Social Change. Our guest tonight is a playwright, a producer, a filmmaker, an actor, and co-founder of DKR Films, which presents award-winning documentaries and is currently screening There Are Things to Do. This is an amazing documentary, and a documentary that is shining a light on an incredible activist by the name of Urvashi Vaid. And in addition, we're going to be discussing the range of films and projects that our guest is currently working on. Please welcome Fermin Rojas.
Hi there. I'm very curious to know who your guest is. That person sounds really interesting.
That's you. That's you. There's so much about you. And I have to tell you something before I even get into all the things we were going to talk about. I knew who you were before Janine Sessa told me who you were, because Black Mambas is a film. How do I know about that? I'm a member of the Explorers Club.
Oh, well, there you go.
That film, what those women were doing involving poaching, and you're the one that made the film. Oh my God!
Well, I produced the film. One of my filmmaking partners, Bruce Donnelly, who's a native South African, and one of the owners of DKR Films, one of the partners in DKR Films, Donnelly Kubish Rojas. And he did that amazing film. And for those of you who don't, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on the show.
I am actually thrilled to have you. You're right in the arena of everything that I'm about. And I'm anyone who knows me knows a big film person, using film to communicate, using film to make a difference. And here you are, right here on Triversity Talk tonight. Thank you.
Well, I think film is a very important medium, as is live stage performance. But I'll get into that later. But I think a great launching point for us to talk about what you can do with, I know one of your mission words is educate. And the Black Mambas was done by Bruce Donner, like I said, who's a native South African. And there's that organization, the Black Mambas. And it's an organization of women who patrol the parts of the Kruger National Park without weapons.
Right.
And they have been very effective, but that's just I would call the symptom of what they do, because the real work, a lot of the real work is behind that actual task. And that is educating their children on the fact that they can have a career doing this, and eliminating or trying to mitigate the culture of gun ownership that pervades a lot of their community. And also they partner with an educational arm to teach conservation to native populations. That film got a lot of attention, and
it was amazing, because I'm going to jump in because I helped promote that film because of what it said. I've worked in Africa, so the situation with poaching and the fact that they were able to take the skills that women have because they are women. We're talking about matriarchs, right, in society, and in very male-dominated villages. This was a big turnaround, and
the project also provided them with an income, because they were having problems with the typical breadwinner in the household, which would be the male, not having access to employment, and then resorting to poaching because the dollars are easy. And if you have to feed your children, you're going to do what you have to do.
And thank you for saying that. I give tours at the Explorers Club. This is a huge topic I speak about, because everyone is like, we got to save the elephants. We got to do this. We got to do that. And I say, we've got to take care of the people first, so we take away the reason for poaching.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation with a friend earlier today. He's like, do people do evil things, or are people innately evil? It's too much of a philosophical conversation for here. But the point being is, if you provide people with resources to have a life with dignity, then we don't have to resort to things that we might label as evil or criminal, or things like that. So I'm so happy that you loved that film. It was one of the more special projects we had at DKR Films.
Why are these kinds of films important to you? I mean, the film that we're going to discuss tonight, There Are Things to Do, right? Mm-hmm. Why is this so important to you?
So, well, the short answer to that is, I think it's important. I'm interested in stories that we may not otherwise know, right? So let me wax philosophic for a moment. I wanted to talk about the power of film and where I think film is very useful to us, because it's not only a reflection of our times, it's also an interpretation of our times and a historical record. If you look at a lot of the neo-expressionist German films after World War II, they were capturing the landscape that otherwise may not have been recorded, or we may have forgotten, or other people around the world may not have seen, and it was expertly captured. Also in films by Stanley Kubrick, who really captured the zeitgeist of AI before we ever even had the term AI, So I think film is a reflection and an instrument to be a record. And filmmakers are very observational people, I found. Either the most minute social detail or characteristic about a person or subject. So I'm drawn to some of these topics, particularly topics of social importance, because it's my own history. I am a Cuban immigrant. I was born in Havana, Cuba in 1960, just over a year after the revolution had happened.
Amazing.
And ended up coming to the United States with my family in 1966. And we were not the wave of rich people. We were just common, everyday
Right. And I have to ask you, because this interests me, historically, what was going on in Cuba at that time when your family left?
Well, at that time, it was very quick and dirty history. Fidel Castro promised to oust the Batista regime, which was also an oppressist fascist regime, promised democracy, and then turned around and changed his ideas and, professed allegiance to the communist, socialist, school of thought, and partnered up with the Soviet Union. I don't want to get off the topic here, but a lot of that was precipitated as well by the way that he was treated, by his perception of how he was treated by the U.S. government after he won the revolution. But anyway,
but what was it like for you?
What was going on there was oppression. An enormous amount of oppression. One of the things that became very effective was turning people against each other. And all of a sudden, you were spying on somebody that had been your best friend. there was an incident when I was a child that I vaguely recall it, but I recall the moments of it where every July they would come and put little communist flags. Remember the red flag with the sickle and the hammer? They would put those all across the front of the property in Cuba. And my mother, her brother, my uncle, was imprisoned for being an anti-Castro activist. And so the woman who had been a very dear friend of hers that then became the head of the central spy committee of the bloc.
Exactly.
Went and put one of the flags in front of our house, and my mother went out and ripped it up in front of her. Well, this woman was accompanied by an armed guard, and they pointed the gun at her, and my mother said, "Go on, you've known me for 20 years. Go on, pull the trigger."
Read it. Yeah, go ahead, shoot me.
And she didn't. And they didn't clearly they didn't kill her, because here I am. But I guess that things like that stay with you, and I'm concerned with telling stories of culture, and people that may not always see their stories told in the mainstream. Oh my God, who is that beautiful creature?
This is somebody that wants to be on camera that needs to go over here. That's Nugget. But I had a reason for asking you this, because your background was as interesting to me as why you do what you do right now. I have other friends that came here from Cuba, and I had the stories, of sewing what few family jewels they had into the hems of the dresses. And here you are in this country, and you're using who you are and what happened to you. You just said it. It stays with you.
Yeah, we're the sum of our experiences.
Thank you.
I've heard a very wise playwright, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, say, all plays are autobiographical because it's a collection of the writer's experience. Yes, right. You embody other characters, but you're ultimately saying what you want to say,
right?
About observations of society. But so, with that said, I think film and stage have a great ability to educate and shine a light on topics and cultures that we may not normally see. A dear friend of mine, and a national treasure of a playwright, Umfoniso Udofia, is currently having a 2-year run of a cycle of plays that she's written. She's a Nigerian American playwright, and she's written a 9-play cycle of the plight of a family over 3 decades. So it's those kind of stories that really interest me, and I'm working on a project with her currently, which I'll talk about later on. But to dive into this film, There Are Things to Do.
Yes.
Which has turned out to resonate far beyond all expectations. The film was the love conception of Mike Sayers, our brilliant director. Yeah. And in Provincetown, we have a filmmakers group, a small filmmakers group, and we get together. And initially, the idea, some of the filmmakers in the group were asked to do sort of like tribute films for 3 members of the community who had passed away, and Urvashi Vaid was one of them. And Mike became fascinated with wanting to tell the story. And then I said, you know what, I'll produce this with you and do this. And then we started talking and realized that there were so many, that Urvashi was such an important figure in the LGBTQ movement and in the LGBTQ history, in our collective history. Right. She's probably the most, one of the most influential and important LGBTQ activists of the last 50 years. And unfortunately, she's not a household name.
Which is exactly what, trust me, I'm living in New York. I know who threw the first brick at Stonewall. I'm just joking. But one name after the next. I've had tons of people on my show. I never heard of this woman until I heard about your film. So then I go into Google. I'm like, oh, my God, she's a major. Thank God they made a film about her.
She ran the task force. She was one of the organizers of the March on Washington in 1993. She worked for the Ford Foundation. She then created the VAD Group, which was her own, think tank and lobbying group. But she's a force of nature. And so Mike and I became very interested in telling her story, but not necessarily in as a biography of her career, but digging in precisely to what her main point was, which was to start the movement navigates through small communities,
Right.
through building
It's
intimate
totally
communities,
about mobilizing small communities.
mobilizing small communities. And I think the film might be resonating because that's exactly how the film got made. It became a community effort between Mike, myself, my husband, Jay Kubish, who was the film. Hello? Did we lose? Okay. Yeah. Oh, we had a little sound glitch. My husband, who became the editor, our fiscal sponsor was a local organization. We had donations from the Paulette Fund, which Terrence Meck, who runs that, is part of our community. So the film got made in the way that Urvashi would have wanted something to happen organically,
absolutely,
purposefully, and at a community level. And then as we started to explore how we wanted to tell her story, we realized that Provincetown had been her incubator of sorts. That's where she would gather with her, with other activists, and they would hatch ideas and plot out how they were going to get things done. She also, I think, in some ways, and I mean this in the best sense, used Provincetown as her lab. She created an organization called the Commons, the Community Commons, which is a building that houses artist studios, meeting rooms, art galleries, and it's become one of the central focus points of the Provincetown community. She also hatched the idea for LPAC, Lesbian Political Action Committee.
That was her.
Provincetown. Yeah. So we picked these moments in the film, and for those of you who are watching, the film is only 20 minutes long, or not even, but let's just call it 20. And so what we focused on was telling the story as about a person who lived in a community and practiced what she preached in her community. And then, of course, there's the beautiful part of the story, which is her relationship with Kate Clinton, her treasured LGBTQ comedian and activist. And so we decided it was going to be a love story about how they influenced each other's careers, how they influenced and changed Provincetown, and how Provincetown changed them. And and the main message in it is we titled it "There Are Things to Do" because it's the title of the last chapter in a seminal book about LGBTQ movements that she wrote, and I have it jotted down here because I want to give the whole title of the book correctly. It's called Virtual Equality. Most people just say it's Virtual Equality, but the full title of the book is Virtual Equality: The Mainstreaming of Gay and Lesbian Liberation. And it won a Stonewall Book Award in 1996. And one of the main points in the book is that if we are going to succeed in any movements, whether it be the women's movement, equal rights movement, gay and lesbian rights, we have to find intersectionality for all our
absolutely
causes.
Right.
And I think, for example, the Commons in Provincetown has become that point of one of the points of intersectionality for the community, because there's art galleries, there are artists, there are fundraisers, there are speakers, there are plays. So and a lot of the things that happen there are themed around all topics, climate, politics, etc. So those are the kind of incubator moments that I think we notice that people achieve, and that's, I think, the biggest message that I hope people take away from them is that we're not powerless, we're not, except we have to redefine how we exercise our power.
I mean, I am so on the same page as you, and these words that you are speaking tonight are extremely important, and I'm going to tell you why. I've had, at this point, 8 friends who have left the States, and I have more that are leaving the States. And out there, that was considered a very extreme reaction by other people. I'll just put it that way. The fact that this last election impacted people to the degree that it did in the LGBT community, we got a problem. We got a problem. And the day after this all happened and people were taking their pictures on Facebook and putting just a black space, I'm like, wait a minute, kids, you know what? That I don't believe that's how you play. I believe in a groundswell. And that's what you're talking about, the power of community, because that is all we have right now. But you know what? It is a power.
You know, I love one of the things that Kate Clinton says in the documentary. She says, I think Urvashi would have been very pleased, not pleased, but she would have been tickled and interested in this radical reaction or backlash against LGBTQ rights, because it means that they got that freaked out that we were becoming mainstream, right? And that was part of virtual equality too, is making our movement mainstream. And I think we have in many ways achieved making our movement mainstream. Of course, you know, politicians and religious fanatics find great opportunity in singling out parts of a community.
Absolutely.
Like the trans community right now has become
attacked.
The target, and that was a concerted and targeted campaign on the part of the Republican Party.
Right.
And they've become the target. And unfortunately, one of the things I've heard from some people, some gay people that I know, you know, is, well, you know what? Maybe we just need to back off on this issue because
I've heard it too.
And that's so disturbing to me. I where I go at it is I'm like, okay, how do we adapt, right? How do we adapt? You know, learning how to fight a foe. The most practical thing is figuring out the weaknesses in the argument and then just drilling at it and drilling at it and drilling at it. A drop of water constantly can wear down a mountain.
Right.
So that I know that's how I see my role now. You know, I'm in my 60s, so I don't know. Marching out in a parade is something that physically is difficult for me. So I'm choosing my mediums, film.
You're choosing them well. Look at the weapons you've come up with. Film, it's a brilliant weapon.
Well, and another documentary that we worked on for a couple of years with the Native Wampanoag community.
Right,
here
and you have that in the Smithsonian, right?
So we did several projects. It was an honor to work with the Wampanoag community here on Cape Cod for 2 years. And we did a few things. We worked with them on creating historical exhibits for museums, including the Provincetown Museum houses a permanent exhibit that was redone to tell the story of the Wampanoag and Native relationship properly. Excuse me, the Wampanoag and Pilgrim relationship properly. And so we worked with and for a company called Smoke Signals that's owned by a Native historian and her son, who's a producer. And so we created reenactments, including the signing of the Mayflower Compact and other moments in that story. And then we also, for 2 years, filmed. They decided, the tribe decided to reweave a ceremonial wampum belt. And for those of you who don't know what wampum beads are, they're these little tiny beads that are made from the shell of a quahog clam. So they had native artisans all over Cape Cod, working on these beads because they didn't want to use fake ones. They were all real. They rewove a ceremonial belt for the first time in 350 years, and we captured that on film.
Amazing.
And then tied it into a very interesting story about a native sachem who went by the name King Philip, and he was the last native to stand up to the colonist, and of course lost the battle with them. But his ceremonial belt disappeared to history, so they were hoping that this new ceremonial belt would call out to the spirits, the ancestors, and somehow,
I love it. Right.
be able to reclaim the belt that was lost to history. Fascinating and
fascinating. And if you don't tell these stories, nobody's going to know that they happened. And
I think there are so many wonderful documentary filmmakers out there. Particularly with LGBTQ history, Rob Epstein, and Jeffrey, and just shed a light on some of these things. And it's amazing to me that people are always thirsty for new information.
Absolutely.
I think people are definitely curious and want to learn a lot more about history. And I'm fascinated with history. If we forget history, not only are we doomed to repeat it, but
it's the groundwork. It's everything that came before. But my thing is, we take what you do, and her film, there are things to do. It's community based.
Yes.
How do we get it out there, okay, in this country of ours, seen, heard, where the questions, by the way, in your information that you sent, I love that you sent discussions. So you're already thinking that way.
So Mike designed a social impact campaign for us, and along with a wonderful producer in San Francisco, Mark Smolowitz, 13th Gen Films. And so we've consulted with him, and so we wanted to reach as many people as possible. Mike himself is an icon of the LGBTQ movement. He started LGBTQ groups for Ernst & Young, where he was a partner for many years, and throughout the finance community. And so we reached out to that community. We've made the film available to the LGBTQ centers across the country for free through an organization called Centerlink, which
I know who they are. Yes.
Yeah, you know who they are. And then it's also been shown at the Colin Powell Institute in New York, and they want to start possibly using it for educational purposes. We have educational distribution through Good Docs. And we're in negotiations with public television.
All of this is like really, really amazing. And you know what? You're really striking while the iron's hot, because people are going to be very ripe for this kind of information right now.
Well, so you were saying, how do we get involved and how do we do this? So one of the things we wanted, since the film is educational, one of the things we included in our social impact campaign is, if anybody wants to have a screening, you can contact us. You go to our website and you can contact us through there, and we'll work with any budget. None of us made money on the film. We all worked pro bono on the film. We did have expenses, so hopefully, recoup a little bit of that. However, no salaries for anybody. This was all our full on art and activism together.
I love it.
But also on the website, there are links to other organizations, the National LGBTQ Museum, the Paulette Fund. We, all of these, the LPAC. And LPAC is a wonderful organization, Lesbian Political Action Committee, and their focus is to support and fund down ballot candidates all across the nation, specifically women and non-binary candidates. And this year they were very, very, very instrumental in getting a lot of people elected.
Which is great.
Local government. But
again, we're talking community, we're talking local, groundswell.
Local. Yeah. If we all work local, then this film started local, and it's reached 5 continents, over 50 film festivals. Hopefully it'll be seen across the whole nation once we get this next licensing agreement in place. And I hope it continues to have a role in education, and also, like I was saying earlier, being yet another historical document. There is another filmmaker who's doing a full-length documentary about Urvashi.
I am very glad about that too, because I was reading about Urvashi, and this is a huge life. Look at what she's done. Yeah,
her name is Nancy Cates, and she's a terrific filmmaker. She did a magnificent film about Bayard Rustin, another icon of LGBTQ history that is not known by a lot of people. He worked right along with Martin Luther King. He was a gay man. Yeah, I mean,
Those
so
songs, wow.
hopefully Nancy will be able to do a much deeper dive into the career and impact that Urvashi had over her entire career.
Absolutely. I want to show the trailer now because
Yes,
I want
please.
everybody to know it's a powerful trailer, by the way. It's very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here we go.
I may be a big dyke, but I have to tell you, I'm not the biggest. Because I'm going to introduce to you the biggest dyke I ever knew. She's from Provincetown, Massachusetts, and her name is Urvashi Vaid.
With hearts full of love and with an abiding faith in justice, we have come to Washington to speak to America.
I remember standing behind her as she was giving this incredible speech, and there were 1 million people. I've never looked at 1 million people live before. And then we came back to P-Town because she'd wanted to write this book.
Now writing probably what will turn out to be the most important book ever written about our movement.
What I'm trying to write about is the future and whether the strategies that we've employed are going to carry us through the 90s into the next millennium.
I heard you speak at the 1993 March on Washington, and it changed my life.
Irv was launching LPAC, the first lesbian super PAC, to gain real visibility and representation, and Urvashi said, this is possible.
When Urvashi and I were talking and meeting with people, it was that there wasn't enough spaces in town outside of the bar scene. She wanted to help foster that next generation of young, queer, diverse people.
Does every single queer person experience the level of freedom, let's say, that I experienced living in Provincetown? No.
I think that the reaction, the anti-gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, against all of that right now is like Urvashi always felt, is a measure of how well we're doing. They're that freaked out.
I'm not just here to stand up as a lesbian. I'm here as a woman. I'm here as an immigrant. I'm here against racism. I'm here to change the status quo because I believe in America and I believe in the future of this country.
Very powerful.
I'm always so moved when I see her speak over and over again. And I mean, I've seen these clips, hundreds of times.
Right.
And, when the first time we had a screening in a movie theater, I had a wonderful experience with her in the film. And I knew Urvashi when she was alive here in Provincetown. And just before I forget, I want to make mention that, her example of being involved did not wane even all through her fight with breast cancer.
Right. Which she eventually passed from at 62, yes. Very young. And wow.
She passed away May 14th, 2022, and she will be terribly missed. But the first time we saw it in a movie theater, since the screen is higher, we had always been, looking at the film this way, on our editing screens. And when I saw it elevated in her eyesight was right with the audience's eyesight. So I felt like she was speaking directly to me. And, you have those rare moments when you feel like the subject of your film has come back to talk to you. And it was a very moving experience to have. The film also screened at New Fest. It won Audience Award at New Fest, and we had a special panel of LGBTQ activists there to celebrate Urvashi's legacy. I just hope we learn more about who she is. I'm going to continue, and Mike and I are going to continue getting the message of who she was out there. This is one of our icons. She's.
She was definitely, though, from everything you've told me and what I've read, she was really ahead of her time. And completely. Actually, a vision. It's amazing. She's yet another visionary that died too young. So it's up to everybody else to take the mantle of what she did, and now more than ever carry it forward.
Yeah, and to everybody out there, it may be something as simple as sending a letter to somebody or an email to somebody, explaining to them how to support the community. That may be the start of an action. The butterfly effect. You never know. Just do something, right? Another thing that I was moved to do was write about the Statue of Liberty. I started reading about her history, and I'm a part of a playwright collective here on Cape Cod, and so over a 4-year period, I wrote this script titled Liberty Talks, and it's to teach everybody, hopefully entertain everybody too, but to teach everybody her real history. She was not a present from the government of France.
Right, which is why, thank you for saying that, because that's what we were all taught in school. She was no gift, Our Lady.
Well, she was funded, the statue itself was funded by a bunch of abolitionists in France who had admired Lincoln for ending slavery. And she was originally supposed to be a symbol of abolition. And very long story, which I won't get into, but it got changed to represent that she was a symbol of the War of Independence.
Right.
Mostly because when Bartholdi, the sculptor, came to the United States to drum up funds because the U.S. was supposed to pay for the pedestal, he came over here in 1870 and realized, mind you, this is like 6 years after the end of the Civil War, nobody wanted to talk about abolition.
Done, right?
So there was no interest in accepting a statue that was overtly a symbol of abolition, and then over time, she became a symbol of for immigrants.
I can't believe you know this. I don't know any of this. This is so interesting to me. How did we finally? The greatest icon in New York is the Statue of Liberty. How many of our parents landed on Ellis Island? Grandparents. So how did they finally accept that this was the greatest thing that ever happened?
Well, she immediately became kind of a hit as a novelty at first, in New York Harbor. Then she kind of fell out of favor for a long time, and then as she became part of the cultural fabric to represent immigrants, etc. And when she got better lighting, then she started to become of interest again. The other thing that made her become more of interest was, the famous poem, the New Colossus by Emma Lazarus.
I don't know the poem.
Yes, you do. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be breathe free.
Yearning to break free.
That's the phrase that most of us know, but it's a much longer poem. It's a sonnet, a Petrarchan sonnet, and that poem was not on the statue to begin with. It got placed on the statue later on through the efforts of a woman who was part of the. Give me a moment here.
Yeah.
He was part of the Schuyler family, the famous Schuyler family. Everybody knows the Schuyler sisters from Hamilton, part of that family. And she had been friends with Emma, and she found the poem again and then lobbied to have the poem put on the pedestal.
What was the time difference from
the poem did not make it onto the statue until I believe it was 1903 or 1913. I can't one of those two dates. And she was inaugurated in 1870.
Wow. You are so good at this trivia. This is amazing. I never
Wait, I got one even better for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
We have a gay and lesbian audience, right?
Yeah.
Emma Lazarus was a lesbian.
There you go.
Emma Lazarus, the woman that wrote the poem that welcomes that we identify with the Statue of Liberty, was a lesbian. Look it up. I'm not making it up.
A lesbian. Wow.
She's also considered the first important female Jewish poet of the United States.
So she was Jewish and a lesbian.
Jewish, a lesbian, and her family were immigrants. They were.
There you go. That we call that the double whammy.
She was Sephardic. She was the Triple Crown. She was Sephardic. Her family was Sephardic.
Wow.
But Emma, in her own right, she worked with immigrants that were coming into the United States from the pogroms, Ashkenazi Jews.
Yeah, the Ashkenazi Jews.
And when she was asked to write the poem, she didn't really want to write it because it was for fundraising for the pedestal. So the poem was really a protest about how dare she was like, how dare they spend all this money on putting up the statue when we have immigrants that need money and help.
Right.
And I think that's when the poem is what helped change the meaning of the statue. So this loving poem that born out of Emma's talent, and again, I go back to different artists. Artists have this unique ability to capture moments in history and help shine a light on them and look at them.
Right.
And I think Emma captured the zeitgeist of the plight of immigrants that she was dealing with.
Right.
And for that, I thank you, Emma.
Well, it's important that artists also understand that they've got to communicate this to their audience, right? When you put those words, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning
to breathe free.
Breathe free. Anybody that's on one of those boats coming in, boy, I completely identify with that. And I'm interested in you. Of course, you emigrated here much later, but there's got to be, those words have got to resonate with you. You left Cuba.
The reason I wrote the plays, I've been fascinated with her since I was a kid. That was she's the face of the United States of America.
Yeah, she absolutely is.
Yeah.
So you have other projects too that are interesting to me. You work with in Cuba with a gay men's chorus.
Well, so I was a part of the gay men's chorus community for many, many, many years. I sang with Miami. No. In the United States, I sang with Miami Gay Men's Chorus for 10 or 12 years.
Right.
And I wrote some of the books for their musicals.
Yeah.
They would present their concerts like book musicals. So I would write the book for the musicals. And so, in the history of the gay choral movement is also very powerful in this country. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, which was the first one, was born on the night of the vigil for Harvey Milk.
That I know, yeah.
And that was the beginning of the gay choral movement in the United States. And so after we had done our first documentary film in Cuba about artists, that's titled Alumbrones.
Yes.
And it's about artists living and working in Cuba. But I got it into my head that it was the right time to create Cuba's first gay men's chorus. LGBTQ rights are very important in Cuba, and they even have constitutionalized equal rights for LGBTQ citizens. But we thought it was a great idea to do that, so we went about casting it. It's a very long story. I filmed it all. One of these days I'll do the documentary about it. But we ended up producing a group which was 5 amazing singers. They were called Mano Mano. They were an a cappella group.
Right.
A wonderful musical director who's now working here in the U.S. Ernesto is his name. And so we produced that for 2 years. Eventually they came on a 7-city tour of the U.S. and sang with him.
That's incredible. You made that happen.
Yeah, that was our labor of love. It's one of those things you look back and you're like, how the hell did we do that?
I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell did he do that? Wow. But I love the fact that, you thought you could and nothing stopped you. And now while we're talking, you're talking about you want to take that footage and make it into a film, which you absolutely should do too. That is something I think people would be. I find it completely fascinating. There's a huge gay population.
I want to tell you how that story ended. It's not a spoiler alert, but we talk about legacy and how we're going to help the next generation of gay and lesbian and transgender people coming through the ranks. So after that, the group came on a 7-city tour of the U.S. They participated in Gala Festival, which is the international gay lesbian choral festival that happens every 4 years, etc. Long story short, 3 of them stayed, 3 of them went back to Cuba. One of the young men, Ariane Carlos, who had been part of that group, went back to Cuba, and then eventually, and he was always like the son I never had. And we became very close with his mom. And over the years, we stayed in touch. And then at the beginning of 2020, we had helped him get a visa to come to the U.S. And he was possibly looking to sing here. And then COVID happened and he came up to live with us. Fast forward, he is now kind of like my adopted child, and he's going to school in Chicago. He wants to be an architect. And, you know, I started that project because I wanted to create legacy of gay activism in Cuba. And what I ended up getting was the legacy of being able to launch the life and career, or help the life and career of another LGBTQ citizen whom I happen to care for very much.
Right.
And like that, you know, I mean, that's not a small act, but again, it's a community act. It's something that happened in my home. And so that's become one of the great joys. And my husband, God bless him, Jay Kubish, he has been in on all of all of these projects. He's made all of them happen.
There's so many projects and none of them are easy. I mean, taking someone and giving them a completely different life, bringing them up here, oh my God, while you're doing all the films and everything else, because you can't seem to stop doing it. And I love that. And you know what? Your activism is infectious. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I hope it is, because you know, we now more than ever, we have to bind. We have to continue. Do we need a moment to take a breath and like say, okay, you know, but I'll leave you with this because I know we're almost out of time. One of the next projects I'm working on is I'm producing a musical titled The Gospel of Eureka. The Gospel of Eureka was a documentary film made by Donald Mosher and Michael Palmieri. And it's a wonderful documentary about the community of Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
Which I know about.
But it was centered around an anti-trans bathroom bill that had come to town. But it's the story of this drag bar run by these two guys, and like this reenactment of the Passion of the Christ that happens there, which is one of the biggest attractions in the United States. And I'm working with a wonderful writer, director, and composer. I'm working with a fellow named Jeremy Cohen, who ran the Minneapolis Playwright Center for 20 years. I'm working with a wonderful writer whom I mentioned earlier, Umfuniso Udofia, and our composer who's playing with us on this right now is Emily Saliers of the Indigo Girls.
Oh my gosh! Wow!
So it's like all of it keeps coming full circle, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Right, everything does come full circle, and I have to tell you, because I got to give a shout out to Provincetown. I've had the Bettys on my show. I'm a member of the Imperial Court of New York. They're going to be one of our performers at Night of 1,000 Gowns. You know, where did they go after they were on my show? They were performing up in Provincetown.
We need to do a documentary about you, my friend.
Oh, well, yeah, there's the whole, I got a book out. So, and that's a separate conversation, which we will have. But yeah, it's, there's a power in community. And there are places, I believe, that are vortexes. P-Town is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be on a lot of these places going forward that are going to be part of the new thing, the new groundswell. We've got to do it. And then we've got to get other places in the country to follow suit. That's what I believe.
Yeah. We don't need to focus on the hysteria. We need to focus on what we can do positive and take care of each other.
You are. I love your positivity. I wish you and I had been able to connect the day after the election, because, you know, I felt like Little Mary Sunshine. I'm like, why is everybody putting a black box where their face is? That's not my MO. You know, I went through AIDS. I'm a fighter. And we have to take our ammunition is our art. Now, we are unfortunately out of time. How can people find out more about you in the film?
So I would direct you to the website, therearethingstodo.com.
Okay.
You can learn there more about Mike, myself, where the film has been, where it's going, how you can, opportunities to see it.
Yes,
it's currently playing some film festivals around the country, but it's all right there. I cannot commit it to memory, but it's all the information and how to get involved. And there are worksheets on there on how to stimulate conversation.
I completely, that's what I loved, because you know what? You would think that would be second nature, and it's not. And you put it in your whole social impact packet that you do. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and I always take a picture at the end. So, cheese. Oh, and the dog's licking me. Nugget. God. Okay, just say hi and goodbye to everybody before we
Bye, Nugget.
And thank you again. And we are planning on screening your film at the Triversity Center.
Yes, January 16th, I believe it is.
Oh, day after my birthday. Fabulous.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, darling. We will talk. And thank you, everybody who tuned in. Happy holidays ahead. Happy days ahead. You were very inspirational tonight. Thank you so much.
Happy
Goodbye.
holidays. Bye.